All right. Okay. Welcome to today's live sessions for the QA Underground. Today we are going to be talking about TeamCity, specifically focusing in on how to set up a Java build configuration. So as your automation process starts to mature, you're obviously going to need to start setting up a continuous integration pipeline, and that involves needing to set up build configurations. Now, TeamCity and Azure DevOps, they both kind of use similar setups where you basically set up your build process as steps, right? So you will pull your information from your repo, and then you will create steps to be able to build that solution or project that you pulled out from the repo and deploy it to what you need to do. So today we're gonna walk through and talk about how we set up our Java build configurations. Within the build configuration page on TeamCity, you'll want to select create. So basically, your project inside of your project, you're going to want to select create build configuration. That's the first step. The second step is to select the parent project. So that project that your build is going to be associated to. So for this scenario, I'm going to be using QAUnderground as the parent project, but this is what ties it together so you can find it within the projects of TeamCity. On the next screen, you're going to want to enter your repository URL. So this is basically your git command. This will be used to pull down your repo from either GitHub or Bitbucket or whatever you're using. This is basically the clone or the repository URL. Obviously, the next piece of information we need to provide is the login information or the authentication for the repository URL. It can be, your username and your password. If you're working within an organization, you may have an admin username and password or a tester username and password that you would provide. Any questions on that? Okay. Again, if you guys have questions while we go through this process, please feel free to ask or bring it up or question in the chat or anything like that, so we can get it resolved. And I don't mind of going back. I know this is kind of weird because we're taking screenshots basically from TeamCity and we're going step by step through that process, but I just want to make sure that everybody's comfortable asking questions if needed. So after we enter a username and password, we're going to select the proceed button. This is basically going to verify that the repository URL and the authentication credentials that you provided are working properly. So once that's done, you're going to get the connection to the VCS repository has been verified. And then we're going to actually name our build configuration. So this is what it's going to be named when you go into the project in TeamCity and you look at all the build configurations you have under a project. That's what this name's going to be. So for my scenario, I'm going to call it QAUnderground_build. And then I'm going to simply select the proceed button. Any questions on that? Okay. Next, we're going to actually start building our build steps. So once we've created that initial build configuration, it's going to bring you to the build configurations edit page, and you're going to get a list of options on the left side. Within those options, all we're going to care about right now is the build steps. So there's a version control settings, which is basically what we just set up when we set up the initial project. And then there's build steps. Build steps is where we're going to be building all the stuff that we're pulling from the repository into our own scenario. So like when with Java, we're going to be building our Java project and deploying our tests. So the first thing we'll do is after you select build steps, you're going to select add build step button. We're going to select the runner type Maven from the dropdown. On the next page, so now that we have we're looking at our Maven build step, we're gonna first change our step name to something that we can recognize when we look at our build steps. So we're just gonna simply call this execute testng tests. Then we're going to call or set our goals to clean test so we can start clean. And then for path to POM files, we want to set our path to our XML file. So basically, if you wherever you're storing your POM XML file, that's where you're gonna enter here. You can also use the tree button on the right to find your POM XML file from within your repo and just click it. That seems to be the fastest way if you don't know the distribute. Next is additional Maven command line parameters. So you do have to do this basically so we can target what suite we're going to run. So mine is actually stored, my testng file is actually stored in test resources. But basically we're going to use -dsuite equals and then our path to our XML testng file. So yours may not look like my path. You may not store your testng file inside your resources folder under test, but whatever your path is what you would enter there. Does that make sense? Did I confuse a bunch of people with that? The main thing is that we want to make sure that we are providing our path to our testng file that we've created. Then after we're done with that, we simply hit save. And that's it, we're done. Once you hit save here, you should be able to pretty much do whatever you want as far as the build configuration. So you can alter it and tweak it and modify it to make it your own, but this is the general walkthrough of how to get or create a Maven configuration within TeamCity.